Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Flanderization Files. Quickly, I think we should go around. We should all say our names one more time. Put in everybody's heart, because also I want to see Dakotah put those name graphics back on the screen again. So my name is Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ben.
You guys are supposed to say hi after I say my name, and then we'll do that for everybody else, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Try again.
My name is Ben.
Hi.
All of
Hi,
us?
Ben.
Yeah, everybody at the same time, right? When I finish saying my name. Sorry, mine. When I say mine, and then it'll be your name after I say my name.
Okay. So when you say my name, your name?
My name.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name, and you'll say your name, my name.
Your name.
Yeah, see, there we go. Come on, Dad.
Okay.
I always got it, you guys. All right. My name is Ben.
Your name. Oh, I missed it.
Oh, fuck. All right, maybe we don't have to give you our names. Nobody
All
needs
right.
to know who we are.
No. We got this.
I'm Ben.
I'm
Dakotah,
Tyler.
Hello.
also known as Will Advised on YouTube. We're all putting our names in. Everybody say hi, Ben, on 3. When I say 3, you say hi, Ben.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Your name.
Hi,
Hi,
Ben.
Fuck.
Well, welcome to today's episode, everybody. If you're listening, I assume you enjoy quiet contemplation, a hearty breakfast, and avoiding unnecessary conversation. Because today we're talking about the only man worthy of a podcast, a first podcast even, Ron Swanson.
Bang.
A man who would hate being introduced as or about anywhere near the word podcast.
But not just any story of him. This is a story of how he started out as a man of substance and gradually, through the manipulations of Hollywood, became something less. This is a conversation of how writers took the man who believes in capitalism, and that capitalism is a true meritocracy, who hates taxes more than skim milk, and loves the simple things: red meat, nature, and America. And how Hollywood and their writers reduced him to little more than an exaggerated caricature of a man. Some call it Flanderization. I call it a slow march toward mediocrity. We will dive into 5 episodes of Parks and Recreation. We'll explore how this great man, the simple, self-reliant, rugged American, was turned into a mere punchline that was brought up over and over. Now, don't misunderstand me. I enjoy a good punchline, but at a true man's expense, no, sir. No, sir. We'll start with the high point, handling 93 pointless meetings in a day, which should have been reason enough to burn the government to the ground. And from there, we'll follow his steady descent like a cow being led to slaughter. So sit back, pour yourself a glass of whiskey, light a nice wood fire, and listen closely, because after this, you may want to disappear off the grid entirely. And trust me, that's something our character today knows a thing or two about. Thank
We'll
you.
just do
Thank
smooth jazz. Can we do Duke Silver for the intro or the transition music for today, Sally?
I feel good.
Do you know who Duke Silver is? Is my follow-up. So, Ben, you mentioned the 93 meetings being a high point. Do we want to jump into it and talk about Parks and Rec and how we all watched it first and then get into that, you think? What's your call?
Yeah, let's start there. Yeah, so, obviously, today we're talking about Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec, and I think, like you said, it's a good place to start. Like, maybe we can talk about, like, did we all watch it when it was first coming out? What did we think about it? And sort of, if we've gone back to it, how we have sort of seen new parts of the show, or if it kind of feels the same and like coming back to a nice warm blanket. That's kind of for me. So I'll start. Like, I did pretty much watch Parks and Rec all the way through when it first came out, like season by season. I think probably by the end I was getting in high school and was starting to like not be at home all the time at the end of the day, doing other things. So I kind of lost out on the last couple seasons, but I've gone back and rewatched the whole show like 2 or 3 times at this point. Yeah, and just from that knowledge, I chose 5 episodes for today. But I know that there's a lot of episodes I could have like pulled from. And if you guys have any like episodes, I'd love to hear maybe some of the ones that you guys would have also possibly brought in.
Yeah, I had a slightly different relationship with this show. I was reading a lot about it in the first few seasons as it was airing, but I didn't actively watch it. It was one of those where I eventually got into it through like Tumblr gift sets at the time. I just saw enough of them, especially on like the April and Andy side, where I was like, I've got to give it a try. And then I guess it was later in its run that I realized, because I watched all of it up to its current endpoint, which was season 6. I watched 6 seasons in I think 4 or 5 days before I left for my first year of college, and then my freshman year at CMU was when the final season aired. So I had a much later relationship with it. Going back to it though, it is a comfort show. I watch like the clip sets on YouTube all the time when they come up. I think as a whole, it's kind of dismissed as like this Obama era liberal pipe dream type show, but outside of any political messaging and like the lack of aspirations that I think actually come with it, it's just so damn funny. Like watching these 5 episodes, I was excited that you picked these, not just for the Ron plots, but because there were just so many laugh out loud moments that I kind of took for granted with this show. So different relationship with it now than then, certainly, but I still love it. One of my favorites, absolutely.
Yeah, so I watched this on its grand premiere right after The Office. I remember watching the episode and I hated it. We're gonna be honest. I hated it. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't like it. I knew what they were going for, and it was so ramped up all over on the commercials and everything of like this new show by the creators of The Office. So like but I stopped. So like I watched like the first 2 episodes and then I just didn't think it was funny and we never saw it again. And it wasn't until like college that like I don't know. It was actually like this last year. Like I was picking up. I loved the episodes that I did watch, but I couldn't sit through and watch it just the whole entire time. It was always bits and pieces. I missed a couple of that first season or two. Um, and then I like we talked about a little bit earlier. I get stuck on season 4 or 5. Like on season 5 after that, it's a little shaky for me. It's hard to stick through to season 6 and everything. Although it's some great writing and great work. It's just not as much as it was in the very first couple of seasons. I will admit, season 3 probably was the best one, but
So this is a show I definitely took for granted. It's very similar to Tyler's experience of I would watch it right after The Office, but then I would get a little exhausted after the one Office episode, and maybe it was just a bad taste from The Office. Getting to that point of slowly declining, but Parks and Rec just kind of felt a little too similar for me. Plus, I honestly think that the first season is actually really rough for the most part. It takes a long time to get its footing, and then when Rob Lowe and Adam Scott get in there, it's probably
mm-hmm.
one of the funniest shows of all time. Like it's hilarious, and I started watching it probably around pandemic time. That's how long it's been kind of a burning hole in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I can go back to season 1 and season 2 and forgive a lot of its things because there are quirks that I didn't notice the first time, and I actually enjoyed those first 2 seasons. But it does reach heights around season 3, season 4, and it's just also a very heartfelt show, especially with the political climate. I know we were talking about how it kind of gets stuck in its Obama timeline, but kind of coordinating to what's going on in politics now. There's some relevancy there, and I feel like it's going to keep building that relevancy until for a very long time. I think it, especially with the 5 episodes we're going to talk about, like just hilarious physical comedy, hilarious writing, just things that get missed here and there. Everything is the jokes always go first, the comedy always goes first, and I think that's what truly makes a brilliant sitcom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree like in a way like sure like it was a product of like Obama era
In its
like kind
time,
of
yeah.
climate, but like I think in a way the show was where like obviously it aired on NBC and it had like writers from SNL, so like there were a lot of people maybe on like kind of the political right who maybe wouldn't have liked the show, but like I don't even think I think the show was like for everybody. Like it was so well written for both like liberal and conservative. Like getting into like Ron, like he spoke to a lot of like the values of people kind of on the not Obama side. What we're gonna do today is we've alluded to some episodes. I picked out 5 episodes from across the whole series, which is obviously very hard because they had a lot of episodes in every season. And like, I just kind of like went off of like I went through and read all the titles. That's where kind of where I started. And I was like, oh, like I remember that episode, and I remember that. And then like I took the ones I really episodes that kind of stood on the upper tier of this show, and then like kind of picked from that pool because I felt like we probably either all knew these episodes or like had big moments from these episodes that have endured the test of time, and then tried to pick ones that kind of A, featured Ron more often than in other episodes, and B, kind of had like really clear points that catch this arc that I'm going to talk about right now, which is the arc of how he kind of started off as like the relatively quiet boss who is manly, but like he's just kind of, you would think of him as like kind of your mean, stubborn boss in a way. Like in a lot of ways, the opposite of Michael Scott from The Office. And then how he kind of, as you get to know more about him, just kind of turns into like this masculine man's man. And a lot of the jokes that they kind of play on him at the end of the show when they portray him as like being the ultimate man's man, which I'll get into whether, and like that's kind of the Flanderization that I'm seeing. Is like he goes from this kind of well-rounded boss character who's manly, and then just becomes the man's man by the end. And I have like some beliefs about this. We'll get into it at the end. That like that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think he's really. I don't think he ruins the show. I'll start there, and then we'll come back around. But I think he was really. I think they really changed how they portray him in the show.
Especially with the last episode that you featured was such like a total twist on the first 4 episodes. I was like, whoa. Like I was kind of on the fence of his Flanderization. Like, do you feel like he is Flanderized throughout? Is this kind of a build up to see his Flanderization? And then that last episode kind of really signed that a lot. It was kind of a big twist in my mind because I was like, I noticed a lot of like good growth within Ron, and especially with the relationship of the characters in these episodes, and especially with the episode where he teaches Lauren how to how why government is bad.
And yeah, I think that's a good midpoint for the trajectory Ben's got going on, because it does show that like yeah, he's still on that libertarian shit, but like he's capable of like reason and compromise, and they do give him that towards the end of the show. Like I can absolutely see already where Ben's coming from with the man's man Flanderization, but once he does get married and have his kids and adopt the daughters, have his son, that does start to humanize him in a way. But at the same time, like it's a weird levity like with that balance, and then exactly what Ben's talking about, just this cartoonish portrayal of masculinity that even Nick Offerman at the time and to this day has to find the need to distance himself from a little bit and talk about how he isn't that character just because everything got turned up to the nth degree with that. Ben, let's talk about your first episode.
Yeah, so the first episode I proposed, so kind of to Tyler's, was it both Tyler and Dakotah were kind of mentioning that like it took a little bit to get into the show, and then they kind of fell off, and like yeah, with like season 1, I didn't put any season 1 episodes because I feel like the show was kind of getting its footing. And are you done?
Were you saying something important at that time? So sorry.
Yeah,
I was counting how many times I had to bless him, so you might have to repeat it for my benefit as well.
So I kind of waited until season 2 when I felt like they really started to, the characters found themselves and the writers were really figuring, like knowing who everybody is. The first episode I put in was season 2, episode 21, also titled 94 Meetings. So what I'll do right now is I'm going to give a little description of like what happens to Ron in the show, and then anybody add anything or correct me, and then we'll move into kind of why I picked this for the arc. Ron Swanson in this episode is forced to handle 93 meetings in a single day due to a schedule mistake from April, who thought that March 31st was not a real date. They viewed this as like a nightmare. Ron enlists the help from April, Andy, Leslie, and Anne. April Acting uninterested frustrates Ron, and Andy makes promises against Ron's wishes. Ron berates April for the mix-up, leading for her to quit. After Andy praises April, Ron visits her at home and convinces her to return. And on her first day back, April humorously reschedules meetings with absurd dates, which Ron finds very funny. Is there anything I'm missing in there?
No, not really. I mean, there's a bit of nuance of that. Leslie and Tom, who were there to help, bailed like almost immediately, so Ron got even more overwhelmed with having to take on more of that, which leads to the outburst. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Well, when he convinces April to return, he uses her parents' pet name against her, and she wields a little bit of leverage of her own in return. But I do love that moment at the end of the episode. Like, yeah, he has the outburst, and like, I don't think this is post hunting episode, so we've seen him angry, like shot in the head, angry. So it's not a complete flip of a switch, but it is surprising. And like her reaction in the moment, I think, is justified for both characters. But between him seeing the value in her, not only intrinsically, but also through Andy, and then using Andy's support as a means of getting her back, I love that whole exchange between them in the house. Just the image of him holding his shoes and the little smirk on his face. He goes, "Bye, Zuzu." Just cracks me up and warms my heart every time. Like, it really speaks to, like, even then when he was at his like prickliest before diving off the cartoon board, he still like was pretty well rounded and had those moments of surprising warmth that I always appreciate.
Most definitely, and also showing himself as kind of a team leader. I mean, just kind of divvying off April, Andy, and Ann to do these meetings. I don't find that he was very harsh about it. Like, everybody was pretty agreeable to the plan, and it kind of showed a little bit of Ron Swanson being the boss and showing a bit of that internal growth of his character and what he does based on the complaints of other characters. You can kind of see why he is the way he is. You do see the warmth in the end between him and April. And April also kind of needed that bit of warmth too to build herself up. So I thought that was a strong written episode for the both of them.
And I noticed that was really the formula a lot, and especially in these episodes that you picked. We'll find that when we talk about the more down the future. But there was always like a character arc where he's this hard badass essentially, where just like, no feelings, no emotions, no sympathy, and then at the very end, like, he secretly does one of the nicest things that just gives him growth to the character. And we lose that later on actually. So, and when I started picking up on that by the second episode and third, I was like, okay, I know what he's doing now. And then we got to the fourth one, and then it just kind of, that whole Ranger. When we get the Rangers, I was like, okay.
And that kind of goes to like what the way that they're writing it, right? Is like they put him in more of those situations where he like loses his nuance, and that like kind of different side of him that we're losing. They like are purposefully putting those in there and making storylines that go along with it, which is why they kind of support the Flanderization in a way.
And again, to draw a parallel to last week, it's again, we had to talk about the actor informing the character. Just like Neil Patrick Harris kind of redefined how the creators of the show envisioned Barney to begin with, in the same way as Nick Offerman is a known woodworker, they incorporate that, like his real life wood shop, his Ron shop. Like, I guess that's something we can also talk about down the line, but I guess it's not too early to talk about those parallels and what he's bringing to the table as well as the writers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like why I decided to go down the road of like he's a man's man, but he's not like there's a lot of people who like when I was doing research online were saying that he's like a caricature of like toxic masculinity, but like that's not true. He was like a really good guy who like believed in equality and stuff. It was just that he like had these man's traits. So he's when we're talking about that, it's not that he's like becomes an asshole or anything. Like he's still like he's a good guy. He just is a guy's guy.
It's great what Nick Offerman does with him, because I can't imagine another actor playing that character and not leaning towards one way or the other. Just the way Nick Offerman handles this character is so interesting, and yet he still manages to be monotone for the most part. It's incredible what he does, and it does lean heavily to why I attach to Ron Swanson, is because of the performance of Nick Offerman.
Just going back to toxic masculinity, I do like the episode maps you picked, Ben. I think I'll be able to point them out as we go along where the two that I'm thinking of would kind of meet in between your episodes, because if we did go the route of him being like, despite all the good guy traits, if we're looking at two examples of him being kind of the asshole, maybe not directly towards, well, no, actually both examples I'm thinking he's pretty directly being an asshole towards other people. But I think the first one I'm thinking of comes after this next one we're going to talk about.
One thing I wanted to add just real quick, like I forgot to mention this because I saved a few quotes and stuff, and I had to look up where this quote was from. But like Tyler, you were mentioning in this episode, because I guess I'm not all good with 94 meetings. I said yeah, but I didn't mean it.
Okay. We can have a 95th right now, right here.
95th right now, okay?
95th right now? That's my address. 95th right now. Meet me on the corner.
God damn it. For this episode, like, Tyler, you were saying that he like was really good at being a boss, and he like listened to people and took input. And I just wanted to like kind of parlay that with this quote, or not this quote, but this scene from later on in the show in season 6, episode 12. It's called Farmer's Market. It's the one where like he doesn't like to hear grievances from his staff, but he has to for his job. So what he does is they all come into the office and air their grievances, but it never says anything in the rule that he can't be listening to Willie Nelson while they grieve, like, are doing their grievances. And then I think that scene is really funny, and that's what kind of goes with my point that like I don't think his flanderization affected the show. Yeah. It's like it still works with the show, is funny, but it is different. He like no longer has that side of him where he's caring and listening to people. Yeah. So that is where I would like to close off.
Meeting adjourned?
Meeting adjourned.
Great.
I'll see you for the 96th.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. So the next episode I picked was season 3, episode 1, also titled Go Big or Go Home. So Ron Swanson in this episode is coaching a youth basketball team with strict discipline after the Parks Department reopens following the Pawnee government shutdown. He faces off against Andy, who is much more laid back with his team. Tom, in this instance, is the referee and becomes jealous when his ex-wife, Wendy, supports Ron and starts calling false fouls on Ron's players, leading to their ultimate disqualification. Ron is angry at Tom for that and gets ejected from the game along with Wendy. Despite the chaotic game, Ron's focus and discipline as a coach is like kind of what shines through. It leaves at the end with like things being complicated now because of Wendy.
Yeah.
Okay, so open the floor to everybody else. Am I missing stuff? What were some takeaways from that episode?
I was curious to know more about the internal battle between Tom and Ron. I think they solve it a little bit later on, but I think that we kind of lost that a bit once everybody started getting ejected and shit just started going crazy in the basketball game. I felt like it was building up to something great to carry that relationship between what's happening with Tom and Ron, but they kind of lose a little bit of steam on that just based on the comedy of it. Like Tom just kind of went a little bit more overboard than expected. And I feel like we kind of just lost that after. It is hilarious. It is very funny.
Yeah, I think the point was to drag it out over a couple episodes because I think Ron and Wendy break up. She's going back to Canada and he refuses to go to Canada for any reason. There's so many great gags in this episode. I think despite how many good jokes there are, maybe my favorite thing, like that the plot kind of hinges on, is that they all got different little day jobs during the government shutdown. And because Tom just happened to work at a Lady Foot Locker and was wearing the referee shirt, that's the only reason why he's the referee in that game. I think that's really fucking funny. Am I allowed to swear? Have we determined that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Okay, cool.
I think I already had a lot.
Yeah. Who the fuck cares?
Just check. Just check it. Okay, can we have a 96th meeting really quick?
Yeah, 96th meeting.
Yeah.
I just don't think we all handled that the best as a unit. I think we need to have a little bit of a round table and kind of put a pin in this whole Ron Swanson thing and just discuss good business etiquette moving forward. What the fuck do you guys think?
Good girls.
Writing
Yes,
it down.
Ben.
Who's taking minutes?
Oh no.
Well, you see, last meeting's minutes went about 196. Do we all approve of the minutes from last week's meeting?
Yes,
Yeah.
196. I approve 196 minutes.
And we're
My
currently at 32. So
okay, I only have
So we
200 on
don't-
my monthly mobile plan. You guys are in my 5, so I think we can make that work, but long distance, this could be a problem, Dr. West Coast. The Swanson Pyramid of Greatness, we alluded to in the group chat earlier. Just like Barney in the playbook, I do think this is the start of mythologizing him a little bit, but it's so fun. There's so many great little gags in there.
That is actually a really good segue into why I picked this episode. So I don't think in this episode, I would say Ron is still kind of his lovable self. He's not yet like super the man's man. We get another side of him showing how he could kind of go down that road.
Mhm.
But I picked it because of the triangle. I think that it really exemplified how they want to go forward. Will?
It's not a triangle, it's a pyramid.
Oh, sorry.
Which does imply there's 2 other sides to that we haven't seen.
That's true.
Like, do you think he has 2 more graphic boards, like, with each side of the pyramid?
Well, and the base.
Is that one of our games?
Ooh,
We got a double sides.
That'd be fun.
we have to make a side of the other pyramid.
Well, yeah. What would be some other things on that side? That could be fun.
Yeah.
One of them is just the food groups.
I think the pyramid, much like last week's episode with Barney, like is a place where they're finally bringing in how this, like, it's him like knowing he becomes like aware of his manly manness in a way, and I think that is kind of like they're setting the stage for what comes later, like where he becomes so flanderized, but it's hilarious and is like one of the most memorable and poignant things from the show.
I wonder if a lot of those values that were on the pyramid didn't really fully come through with Tom's actions at the end to how Ron handled all of that. Because throwing the chair is a bit exaggerated. I didn't know, I was kind of putting in my notes that does it really stain what we established in the pyramid of what Ron is? Granted, he didn't go as overboard as many shows would have and probably would have punched Tom in the face or done something a little bit more crazier. But it kind of seems like there were some values he lost within that pyramid. But then again, we just saw the pyramid in this episode, so we're not going to see all of that in the span of 20 minutes.
Now that comes back though, doesn't it? Or is this the only time they ever talk about it?
You know what's crazy is I
Did you
think
talk about it
that's...
other time?
Do they really? Because I could have sworn it was
I
a
think
one-off gag.
I think it's a callback.
I'm looking it up.
I can hear you.
Hey.
Zoom in. I want to read it off your glasses.
Oh yeah, they only show it once. Yeah,
Wow.
in what I'm reading.
Okay, maybe it was just me. I just know that was also like the start of like you said, just almost like the gimmicks of Ron Swanson as well too.
But in a way, it's like that's like the starting point, is they introduce like these are the things that make up him, and then like they play off of those later on. They don't specifically come back to it.
Yeah,
They play off those like caricatures that they wrote on there. What a man!
And I kind of wrote down what he like highlighted with his team meeting, because he highlighted the capitalism, the crying, the rage, the poise, the property rights, the fish for sport, haircuts, and I don't know if that was just all improvisation or if that was purposeful to what was going on in the episode or what happens later on in the season.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll move into episode 3, the third episode that I picked, which is season 3, episode 14, also titled Road Trip. In that episode, Ron is asked by a young girl named Lauren if he would participate in a school interview for her assignment on why government matters. You can probably guess where this is going. Initially, he resists. Ron seizes the opportunity to share his libertarian beliefs with the girl. To illustrate his views on taxes, he eats 40% of Lauren's lunch. My personal favorite part of that whole episode. I thought it was so funny. Like, I was watching it thinking about, like, when the writers came up with that, like, what was that moment like? You know, like I feel like that's gotta be like a raucous room.
I hope it was like right after lunch when people still have like whatever in the styrofoam and they're like, what do you mean? And it's like, I'm so glad you asked. Just like steal their fucking fries.
So it basically, he eats 40% of her lunch, comparing it to the government's role in taking citizens' money. Lauren eagerly embraces Ron's anti-government perspective. The next day, Lauren's mom reveals that her daughter wrote that for the question, does government work? It doesn't. For her assignment, Ron apologizes and has a private meeting with Lauren, and tells her to keep her views to herself until she's older.
Gotta talk favorite line, which was, "You gave my daughter a landmine." It seemed appropriate at the time. Like, that exchange just kills me.
I did see what you're talking about though, where it was just kind of him slowly turning into the punchline, but which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But it did the opposite. It was no longer, it was like tough man, yes,
Yeah.
but like still a softy sweetie on the outside or like the
Mhm.
inside, right?
Like that.
When you suggested
That's a
road
girl
trip,
question.
I thought it was going to be that episode where he and Leslie drive down and the steakhouse is closed and he has that mushroom steak. That's actually what I thought road trip was at first. But no, instead it was that. And again, we're talking about how he can still be humanized, so he still has those moments of like compromise, correction, accountability. Like, and it feels believable even as we're drifting into landmine territory. So episode 4?
Episode 4.
Yeah. So 4, which is a great episode.
Witches?
Witches. Yeah, it's an episode where he's a witch. Season 4, episode 4, Pawnee Rangers, where we finally get to see Ron in his role as the leader of the Pawnee Rangers. So what are the Pawnee Rangers, you might ask? They're a Boy Scout group that only admits boys and faces competition from Leslie Knope's Pawnee Goddesses, which she created because this group only admits boys and she wants to admit girls. On a joint camping trip, the Rangers grow jealous of Goddess's luxurious experience because Ron wants his boys to be outside, build shelters, and eat canned beans because they have to be men and they have to be woodsmen. Eventually, every Ranger, including Andy, which I love that Andy's a part of this episode, defects to the Goddesses, leaving Ron alone by the campfire, where Leslie apologizes for being too competitive and Ron admits the kids aren't as interested in tough survival skills anymore. At the end, basically to make him feel better, Leslie helps Ron start a new group, the Swansons, where he gets self-reliant survivalists who attract like boys and girls, much to like Ron's chagrin. He's very excited about that.
I think you just said 6 words that encapsulate the core difference between Ron in the last 3 episodes and the Ron we have now, going back to that compromise and accountability. And those 6 words are basically to make him feel better, starting the Swansons. And it's understandable. Like, you can be empathetic to his perspective of, like, not everybody wants to be the rugged Boy Scouts doing everything. And there is the gender essentialism that's part of that episode with him and Leslie and the Goddesses. That's kind of its own different path we could go down. But just sticking to what Ron wants, to compare it to another sitcom, it's almost like an Abed situation, weirdly enough, where like they just, and there's something to be said about the family aspect of this show, where it's, we know how Ron is. Ron's particular about a lot of things. Let's kind of coddle him and cater to him rather than push him into adapting with the rest of the world. And there's merit to that, and there's ways of like, you know, finding that connection with other people, and everybody's different. But at the same time, if we're talking about the Flanderization roadmap that Ben's got us on, that's that's absolutely a turning point of like his relationship to the rest of the characters at that point, and like how that Flanderization is encouraged and like kind of codified into the language of the series.
I think age is a big factor of this episode too, of Ron not feeling relevant to the children, to the group anymore. I think it's actually kind of sold me a little bit because he admits his irrelevancy to the group, and it's very genuine.
Yeah, but and I think that's an important thing to like remember too. Is like I think where I'm thinking about this is Flanderization is like he is still like the reason what I like that the writers did is like he's still human even when he gets Flanderized. Like like you're saying, Dakotah. Like he understands that like there's a difference here, like between who I am and like the kids, but also like I think where it's different is like he feels bad, but he doesn't necessarily like apologize. Whereas I think earlier on
Yeah.
he would have like apologized, but now he's like, oh, I feel bad, but this is who I am, you know. Too bad, I'm just
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
It's like he's not really admitting fault
That he
necessarily.
was wrong, because like normally in the other episodes he'd always come back and say, "Okay, I was wrong," and then fix the issue. But this
Yeah,
time it was just kind
exactly.
of like they
And
did it because like he was sad, like you said.
I do
Yeah,
agree with that. I think some part of that as well involves the Ron and Leslie arc overall. Like what we're going to lead up to with Ron and Leslie at the very end is the battle between the genders, which is it can be a typical plot line and it could be served as that. But I see what you guys mean. But also, I think Leslie was a little bit more forward of being kind of the annoying character in this situation rather than
Hmm.
Ron being that, I guess. Because I
Right,
think
and
a
I
lot of things in the beginning, the ways he's teaching the children how to be resourceful by giving them the canvas sheet and then the box to settle as tents. I think that's a pretty good lesson, and also just giving them a can of beans. It's kind of crazy, but at the same time, it's like a natural way of camping, a natural way of survival.
I was gonna say like another thing we could talk about, going back to like an episode that we've been bringing up, even though like we never really watched it, was the episode where Ron gets shot, right? Because even in that, and like, and every time they go outdoors for a day or two, I always think that they're very similar patterns. But the biggest thing with that episode was even when he got shot, he still apologized to Leslie and said, "I was wrong because you were smart by saying that you shot me because it was actually Tom."
and that's
Um,
not even to say he's above apologizing in later episodes, even as he's
no,
flanderized. But if we're talking about the writing and the way it adapts to him, and
yep.
before we do get to the last episode, sorry, were you finished, Tyler? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's what I was just basically saying is like there is like that little bit of we're not focusing on this anymore, but we're focusing on like this.
And as they lean into that aspect of him, the two episodes I wanted to touch on really quick before we get into Ben's episode 5, I think they happen between these episodes. One I know for sure is the season 5 premiere where Leslie is officially in office. Chris asks Ron to step up and be more of a leader and lead the employee appreciation barbecue. And this is one of the examples of when he's just such an asshole to everyone. He shows up with the live pig he plans to slaughter in the park, make a game of it with the kids, break all the rules, be such a dick about trying to appreciate the employees. And at the end, again, Chris sets him straight and he does get them pizza or whatever and say thank you and I'm sorry. So he is capable of it later, but the dickish levels and like the
Hmm.
standoffishness of him at that point are ramped up to the nth degree. And the other one I think is when she's in office. I don't know the exact episode for this one, but it's when they're fighting against Paunchberger on something. And his pushback is to get the greasiest shit, like all the Paunchberger crap every single day, and literally rub it in her face before he shoves it in his about his right as an American and all this other stuff. And it was just, other than the episode 5 that we're going to talk about, it was one of the most boomer type shit behaviors I've
Hmm.
ever really seen from Ron, where it's like individual freedoms and liberties, absolutely, that's always been his thing. But that was when he was just in like full blown dickhead territory for no real reason.
I think one I want to give a little shout out to before we hit to that fifth and final one, is when Ron and Leslie go on a. I don't even remember what happened in the episode. I just know it was like all the previous bosses of the parks, of the park and recreation, and they had to go hiking through all the parks and everything, and they hate each other, and they're all like bitching and complaining, and all old men, and Ron's upset because they ran out of bacon. And he throws like a little hissy fit, and he goes running off into the woods and everything like that. So like I thought that was another part where they started making him the punchline more as well. um
Hmm.
and again, grumpy old man who couldn't settle his feelings with the rest of the others, and
Yeah.
just started acting out. You know what I mean? But
He was definitely the writer's punching bag, or just more of the
Yeah.
writer's puppet to just kind of test him out in different ways of how this character goes about. Maybe just to kind of extend the talent of Nick Offerman, but at the same time, compared to the other characters, all the other characters kind of stay who they are, and they use Nick
Mhm.
Offerman more as like a let's try many different things with them, and other characters could fall into that too, but they all just kind of build and still remain the same.
Okay, so moving to the last episode, the fifth episode in my arc, which is season 6, episode 3, the Pawnee Eagleton Tip-Off Classic. So this episode, Ron becomes obsessed with regaining his privacy after receiving a magazine addressed to him at Diane's house. At this point, if you haven't watched the show, Diane is, they're not married at this. No. At this point? No. Yeah. So Diane's his girlfriend. She has 2 daughters, and it kind of like is a way that the writers try to soften up Ron out of his like manly manness. But we'll get to that. Enlisting Tom and Donna's help, Ron goes off the grid by destroying his phone, all of his credit cards. He removes his names from various locations around town, which was really funny. However, Tom undermines his efforts by posting pictures of Ron online throughout the day. Ron ultimately buys an RV to live in, only to be confronted by Diane. She reminds him that as a husband and a father, he can't live in total secrecy on his own. They compromise with Ron getting like a super old fashioned, like just dial up phone that only Diane and the daughters can contact him at, so other people can't get to him. I picked this episode because it kind of like encapsulates a lot of his intricacies that they kind of introduce. He's the boss who only wants to be like, he's a good boss. He shows that he's a good boss, but he only wants to be dealt with the people at work 9 to 5, doesn't want to talk to other people. Like, he's that, like, kind of gives him that like manly, like, cut off time from work. And then how he kind of is willing to just like go off on his own, and he's going to be resourceful. Like he teaches with the Pawnee Rangers episode. And then he's kind of, I think Will kind of said it earlier, that they oftentimes like put him in a situation where he's growing throughout every episode, but he's not necessarily growing. He's growing through every episode rather than throughout the entire show. So like they always put him back in like this very precarious situation where he has to be a manly man, and then he resolves that, but then he always goes back to doing that. And that's where he becomes the butt of the joke, because they just continually keep playing on that card rather than advance. He doesn't become really any better throughout the seasons.
I think that's something we're going to encounter a lot, just because that's the nature of like an episodic sitcom, even ones that are slightly serialized like Parks and Rec that can have those season-long arcs. If we're going to get into the episode itself, my biggest gripe with it isn't even with Ron necessarily. Going back to Dakotah's idea of him being also a puppet as much as a punching bag for the writers, that's how I felt about this one, and it also really encapsulates what I don't like about a particular type of app satirization, where a show like this, I'm always curious when they do these things of like, oh, she's live tweeting and she's live pinning her grumble as she's doing this, and it all just sounds like a little fake. And there's some of it where you don't want brand recognition, but there's some of it where it sounds like they don't really know what they're talking about sometimes, you know what I mean? And so a lot of times when I'm looking at that, it's like 2 different brands. It's either like people of a certain age or generation who are too old to ever really reasonably use these social media apps outside of the necessary level they need to learn about them to market their shows, and younger people, like older than us, but like let's say 10 years or so, who got into those things in their 20s and early 30s, and they know about them, but their way of satirizing the technology is to heighten it in a way that doesn't really make sense and kind of just absolves it. I don't know. I have a lot of feelings about the way, and it's kind of why I don't love season 7, as they do the time jump and predict what all the grizzle tech is going to look like, and I just don't love it. But I was curious who wrote this and what that breakdown looked like. So I looked up the episode. I did a little digging. It was written by 3 people: Greg Daniels, Mike Schur, and Alan Yang. The first 2 of whom definitely of an older generation and don't necessarily do the social media stuff. I know Mike sure does, but again, super begrudgingly, and eventually backed off of it. And then Alan Yang, who's again like maybe 10 years older than me, who was doing, he and Aziz did Master of None. Like, he's clearly hip to things, So when they do this particular type of like kids and their apps, even though it's going through the filter of Ron going off the grid, all the stories like that in like most modern shows, like it just kind of makes me cringe. It doesn't land as a joke structure for me or satirization, because I don't think they really understand what they're talking about. And when they do, it doesn't make a difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
I think there's blatant brand recognition too. Like they throw out Snapchat, they throw out Vine in this episode.
Twitter too. Like she tweeted from the coffee stand, or she tweeted she got her coffee or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, even the erase all pictures of Ron, I'm like, I don't think that's how any of that works, but.
Oh, okay. So I have a game. So there's one point where there's a poster and it's like, who ate the most hash browns, and then he had most eggs, which I just felt like was really adding to that whole thing of just manly man, right? So I thought what would be fun is going around in a circle, however this works. What would we be the most of? What would be the most eaten from all of us?
So what I'm saying, what I would eat the most of? Or what,
yeah. So if you had a picture taken of you and said like most hash browns, most eggs, what would be the most things that Ben eats?
That's a great question. I'm going to go, I don't know.
And you can have as much fun with this as you want, Dakotah.
You know what? Okay, I think I would be able to devour the most Swedish meatballs.
Meatball.
Meatballs. Okay.
Or any meatball, I guess. I'll just say any meatball. I love a meatball.
Dakotah.
Definitely the most enchiladas verde. I love
That's
it.
a lot of enchiladas verde.
Can I go with like an app or an hors d'oeuvre? Is that allowed?
That's fine.
Maybe like deviled eggs.
That's fine.
I feel like it's one of those things that you don't know you won, then there's a plate of them in front of you, and you have one, and then you've had like 7.
I feel like that's something that Ron Swanson would eat, though. Like, that makes the most sense. You know what I mean?
I feel like he might think it's some foo-foo bullshit. He's like, why would you need to hollow out an egg and add mayonnaise and spices? It's an egg,
I was going to say, why would you top it with a bunch of paprika? The only thing
he would hate the idea of deviled eggs, but I think that would probably
hors d'oeuvre route. Like, he loves his bacon wrapped shrimp, so like it's not out of the question with the amount of hobnobbing he does in the government sphere that like he's probably found acceptable hors d'oeuvres where he's like, I'll eat that and preserve my sense of dignity. Although egg cream in the mustache, dangerous.
See, I think this would be perfect. I think this is what AI was built for, was so that way we could do like an episode of what could be. I think this would be the perfect episode for Ron as well, too. Like the day he tries a deviled egg instead, and like that's that whole manly man thing we talked about. He would hate the idea of it until he actually tried it, and then he just wouldn't stop eating deviled eggs, and then it become an issue.
This is reminding me of that episode when he goes bowling with Tom.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Granny bowling.
He bowls between his legs, and then he comes back with the sunglasses on, and is like, "No, I need the lane at the end of the hall." And then bowls his first ever 300, and then he tells them that they can't put his name on the wall.
Okay, wait. I got a quick little game to tie into Tyler's, and then we'll wrap up episode 5, talk about it as a whole, and then
absolutely
go from there. We got these episodes are going to be coming out around the holidays. So as we're gearing up towards Thanksgiving, you can't say deviled eggs. I already said deviled eggs. What's your hors d'oeuvre, your side dish? What's your non-meat? And I'm going to start with Tyler. Because Tyler, did you give your food?
I didn't. Okay, so originally it was going to be chicken Alfredo. But then when you brought up hors d'oeuvres, I was like, crab rangoons all day long. Like that is, I think that's the one right there.
That's it.
So go like for when snacks. Are we talking like Christmas kind of snacks?
Like just not the main dish, not the turkey or the
Yeah.
ham or
Well,
whatever
'cause I
vegan
was gonna say,
bullshit.
is it like the regular world no meat, or is it the Ron Swanson no meat, where he says at some point, I think during the episode where he's the basketball coach, he's like, fish is basically vegetables. Uh,
Yeah, I guess if you're
that
having like a fish hors d'oeuvre, then yeah, you can say shrimp. That's fine.
I don't know. You mentioned this is coming out during the holidays, so I'm thinking like Christmas, and the biggest thing for me would, like you said, is probably like homemade Chex Mix, or a big fan of like holiday fudge.
Oh,
That's
good
oh,
call.
right, right.
oh
Yeah.
fudge.
Or Buckeyes, the little peanut butter. You know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking like sweets, my mom makes these peanut butter kiss cookies that are just really, really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking sides, mashed potatoes or like those sweet carrots, like those brown sugar carrots, you just can't go wrong.
Oh, I'd like to add a side stuffing, because I didn't think I was thinking like
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
I wasn't thinking of side. I was thinking like the hors d'oeuvres and
Well, I said
everything.
I could say
side
side,
order, just non-meat,
stuffing for
not
sure.
so it could have been anything
A
else on the plate.
non-meat. Okay.
The only one I
Even
can think of
stuffing,
is
sausage.
meat.
A good stuffing does have sausage in it, so there is meat, but the stuffing itself is not.
Yeah, I
Fair.
got you.
Could I
Sally?
also make an exception to that? Because every Thanksgiving, my family would always make ham wrapped in pickles with cream cheese in the middle.
That's the one.
Oh, it's so good, and I would always pick at it every time. Or even if there was just pickles on this like turkey chinaware plate, I would just pick off it and eat it.
I feel like we have the mindset of third world country. I got to give it out to I got to give a shout out to Greece. That Dakotah. That is.
Oh,
I could eat that all day long.
Spankapita.
Unnecessary intro to get there, but okay, take your word for it. Now that we're all fully food pilled, once Ben's done his research, I want to get us back on track and wrap up with Swanson, and then we'll talk about getting out of here.
It's amazing. It's feta. It's spinach. It's wrapped in a little blanket. Why could you not love it?
It's so good. I want to start making babka. Oh, not babka. Baklava.
Baklava. Yeah.
Baklava.
I'll start making kebabs.
Okay, so real talk. Has anyone had like fruitcake or whatever? Like, yeah, like Christmas fruitcake. I've never had it.
It's
like,
not as bad as the cartoons will make you say it is, but it's not great.
Okay. What kind of fruit is in it anyway? Like, what's a green fruit out there?
Is it like dried cranberries or something? Like,
yeah, it's like cranberries, apples. There's a couple different kinds you can get where it's like different blends.
Because those don't even look like apples.
Yeah, so we're on fruitcakes, the thing that Ron Swanson probably hates the most. So I think it's a good time to get back as to
because it's not fruit or cake.
No, it's both. Nope, it's both. He's not a Seinfeld. It's not because it's not what it's supposed to sound like. It is. He wouldn't like it. Was what I meant.
Well, it's like when he said like the only thing he hates is lying in skim milk because it's water pretending that it's milk.
One-liners. Retracted.
Yeah, was there anything else you wanted to add to season 5? I mean, sounds like you guys, or season 5, episode 5 that I picked. Because I feel like, it sounds like you guys understood why I picked it. Like, It kind of led up to this moment, and to Tyler's point, like it became kind of uninteresting, and it makes people want to leave the show later on. Potentially.
It's not necessarily connected to Ron, but it is in a way. But I just don't really care for Diane at all. I just think, as Ron's final counterpart, she's kind of dull. I feel throughout, like she almost serves as that, perfect American wife where she really cares about Ron. She's going to take care of his children, and she expects him to be a good father. It's just, I think she's a little bit a part of that downfall for him.
I vehemently disagree. I think she goes toe to toe with him. I think they don't use the trope of the strong, independent woman. I do like the contrast of her being all around American when Lucy Wallace is Australian, and you can hear her accent peek out a couple times. But I don't know. I thought she was. I think as a whole, I didn't love everybody getting their perfect happy ending in shows like that. I do think it was a little too perfect with a bow wrapped around for everybody. But if we're gonna get that, I think Diane and the kids were pretty close to perfect. I think she was a good match for Ron. I liked her a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like to that, I feel like if we're talking flanderization, earlier on, Ron was able to kind of the emotions that they say he feels, like when he struggles, like all of these episodes, like it's anytime it's a Ron plot, it's like it's him um struggling to like grapple with the fact that he's settling down and he's no longer a man who's on his own. And then like the show ends with like each episode ends with him like realizing, oh, he needs to do it for the kids because he loves the kids and he has love in his heart. But that's like where he becomes the butt of the joke, is it's like his manliness is the butt of the joke every time, and his like willingness to come back and be like I don't know, like that's where I was mentioning earlier, they like balance out by taking out toxic masculinity. It's like every episode he's wrestling with toxic masculinity, but then he always ends up not doing the toxic masculine like decision, like leave the daughters, or like when the episode, I love it when he first watches them and like they like put stickers and stuff all over the room and like cover him in paint, and they're like painting his socks at the end. He's like, oh yeah, I'll take care of them again, but like he's honest in front of them, but then is like you realize he's doing it for a reason. That was a bit of a ramble, wasn't it? I'm
We
sorry,
got there.
everybody.
No.
Cut it out. Come back to talking about whether we think he really was flanderized, and if so, did his flanderization or lack thereof ruin the show? Or did it make the show better, or was it neutral? I can go first. I think Ron is flanderized throughout the show. I think in a lot of ways it also goes to like there's a lot of lore now. Whenever I like look up Ron Swanson, it's always like episodes like, oh my gosh, there was a list of like the 10 best episodes of Ron Swanson, and it was like the first one that came up on Google, and I like clicked on it and read through the episodes, and then when I went back to the title, it said the 10 best episodes of Ron Swanson ranked by masculinity. And I was like, yeah, like that's what a lot of people have taken from him, from the show. But I think while that is like where he ultimately ended at, was being like the man's man, I personally don't think it was bad for the show. I thought it actually kind of served a purpose within the way the show ended up wrapping up. It kind of got him out of the way so that some of the storylines that we got of other characters that weren't as prominent necessarily had time to like wrap up well. And it made so that there was like a guaranteed joke every episode.
Mm-hmm.
So for that reason, I thought it was fine for the show. It just happened, and it's kind of a natural thing to happen for a character like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of think you hit the nail on the head. I would agree that in some aspects he's absolutely flanderized. As much as you can be in a live action series, and again, this is something that we're going to be really struggling with a little bit more, or at least dealing with more than a cartoon where it really is complete stasis throughout. This, at least, there is eventual serial growth, but there is a lot of necessary resets in between just to tell these episodic stories. So as much as he can be in the context of what we're talking about, absolutely I think he is. But to your point, Ben, absolutely, I don't think it negatively impacted the show. I think it was memeable. I think it got a lot of eyes on the show in the first place, introduced the world to Nick Offerman, although I was a fan of him from George Lopez. He played like George's mom's fiance or something on that for a little bit.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I've always loved Nick Offerman, but I think he was absolutely flanderized, but I think it worked well for the show. I think it worked in tandem. And even in the 7th season, which is a lot of people's least favorite, even at that flanderized point, I think his feud with Leslie and the reconciliation that they have and the reasoning behind that feud as he gets more in depth with it, it's informed by those things that, yes, are flanderized to a certain degree, but also that's not necessarily a bad thing, as it does motivate the character. It's at least clear to track the intentions behind it and see that pattern of learned behavior as it goes along and continues that trajectory as he leaves the parks department and finding out the why behind it. So I think, yeah, it served the show well for what it was. I think it was as they're trying their hand with the single cam stuff, with the mockumentary type thing, and finding the character development, I think overall could have gone a hell of a lot worse. And he could have just been a stick in the mud. Kind of, I don't want to draw a comparison to Captain Holt, because I think they do humanize and Flanderize him in a different way if we are at the Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but similar. So those are my thoughts. Yay, Flanderize.
Yeah, definitely does see some Flanderization. I'm gonna agree with both of you though. Whether we like it or not, I think it works. I think it was for the purpose of the show. I think when he got Flanderized, there's a lot of episodes that he slowly dwindles down of just being a secondary character instead of being in the forefront, which he really was in the first couple of seasons. I'm happy they got rid of everything Mark plotted because that one was just I felt like that did a disservice to the show throughout every time they kept bringing him back. So, but you definitely do see it's almost like they had to lose time for Ron to give more time for Leslie and Ben and all those other characters to grow as well. Yes, Will.
Just one thing about Mark, because I know he's, again, fan least favorite, if you will. But I actually like the episode where he calls Ron out on his shit as he tries to avoid all the proper zoning laws and building codes for his workshop.
Okay.
And, like, they have kind of a good cop, bad cop, or that's not the right dynamic, but just really somebody who is, again, kind of like Diane, going toe-to-toe with him, even that early in the series of like, yeah, I understand you're a man's man. I understand you want the government in your business. I understand you want to run your wood shop how you see fit. But this isn't about bureaucracy. This is about a physical hazard that it's posing upon you. And that's why I'm doing this. It's not because I work for the government. It's because it's a safety thing, you dick. And I like that a little bit. I feel like there were less people other than Leslie and occasionally Ben or Chris. So, like, sometimes there are people who can push back on him a little bit, but I thought Mark was the first one and maybe the only one to outright challenge him that early on.
But no, that's like a really great callback to the series as well too. And I don't know. I think it works. I like it, but the season where he starts to challenge Leslie and becomes that very, like you were saying, very like angry dickish, just like against the government and stuff like that. And it really put a big sour taste in my mouth, especially that relationship we watched grow for 5-6 seasons just to get dwindled down by a terrible plot of them fighting with each other, and going toe to toe, back and back. But then at the end, it serves a.
It's like a reverse Barney and Robin.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it works out. Like it serves its purpose. It definitely does. But it's one of those seasons where it's like, I would rather just watch the rest of the first 5. You know what I mean? Because that last season's just kind of sad. Like, and then there's season 7, but we don't talk about that one.
The last season.
Well, yeah, but like Ben was saying earlier too, it's like after season 6, like that really could have been the finale. It's almost kind of like how Scrubs, like at the end of season 7, that was it, and then they decided to go on for another season, just too long.
Do you mean season 8? Because they switched to ABC,
Yeah.
did season 8, and then they did the spin-off, pseudo-spin-off.
Yeah, that's okay. Still, I feel like, yeah.
It's worth asking, though, because it does look super stylistically different when they went to ABC, and not everybody loved even that last proper season.
I feel like, they ended up perfectly, and then they did, like, the spin-off, which ended up being season 9 or some shit like that.
Sally, closing thoughts?
So, I would put a stamp of Flanderization to Ron Swanson for sure. I think, especially in the later seasons, it's kind of hard to open that filter up to see that, because I think they established many great things, but it's almost like too many things in one pot that just started to boil and boil as the series went on. I don't think it ruined the show at all. I could probably think of a couple more things that were potentially worse than Ron Swanson's character growth. I do love the episode with Ron and Leslie. They're fighting. I don't know if that's just because it's a great episode of physical comedy between two wonderful actors, or if it really like serves a purpose to the character growth at all. I don't know. I had to kind of go back to it, but I really do love that episode a lot. So I don't think his Flanderization ruins the show at all. overall, Ron Swanson just kind of became too much of a mishmash of many things, and it was kind of like the writers kind of gave up on him and decided to experiment with him more. They were like, "Well, he is who he is. We kind of established him in season 4, season 5. Now let's just throw a whole bunch of shit at him and see where he goes with that." Ultimately, I like his ending. It's pretty lighthearted and sweet. It's probably what we would expect out of that character. Um, I really don't know how else you would resolve his character overall besides him being like the superintendent of the national park. I really couldn't think of another ending besides that. But it does fall into like a typical like uh, Bron's having his wife, he's got kids, he's got the job that he loves. So I don't know. Maybe there could have been a much more darker twist to him.
Yeah, I'd love if he went full Dexter.
Yeah, or maybe like
kills the kids, runs away.
Like he raises his son, like William, as like a Dexter, and runs like, you gotta treat wood a certain way. You can't just go cutting down trees. But I'm gonna teach you a code.
Let me teach you hunting with rifles.
Yeah, because Dexter ends the series. He goes from like serial killer to lumberjack. Maybe Ron flips it. So if we're putting the stamp of Flanderization on Ron, that's really great for the sake of our logo, because we can just take the legally nondescript Flanders glasses off and then keep the stamp, and we've just got Ron Swanson. So I would say, I think last order of business before the outro is, Ben, how are you going to decide who goes next to pick a character?
Ooh. Well, we were talking earlier on in the episode about all of us creating a new panel piece for Ron's pyramid of masculinity. How about each of us decide on one, and then we'll all vote on which one was the best one. So I am going to ask Will to go first.
He's got 2 for skim milk. I think we put another side on. It would just say raw milk. It's E. coli lying about being milk.
Oh, dear God. Okay, I like it.
I think if he were to have his own brick, it would be flossing. It's for the weak-handed.
Do you think that's what's holding people back? Is like,
it's too fast.
Yeah, I think he say toothpicks. There is no such thing as flossing. Like it's chewing on wood. That would be his thing. Toothpicks. A real man chews wood. A real man doesn't put his hands in his mouth. That's something that he would say.
If I had to add a part to it, I would say explosions. Always keep a claymore at your disposal.
That's a good point. I like it. That could even be like protection. I was gonna say mine. The top part of mine would say lattes, but the under part would say, but only lattes that don't have latte art.
Just coffee without the foam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, lattes, no milk. Do we just? Should I just say everybody? Pick your favorite. I'm going with Dakotah's.
I'm going with Tyler.
All right, let's do it. All right, I'll go with Dakotah's. Just give a majority.
Yeah, we're going with Dakotah. But thank you for giving me my
because I know you, when we were studying, you said, I want to go look at the thing so that if I unfortunately get picked next week.
Still haven't found that file yet.
Now we're forcing you to open it up.
It's like at towards the very top of our group text, Sally.
I'm really curious though what everyone came in today with, like, prepared for next week if they did get picked. So,
I was hoping I wouldn't get picked after this week.
Oh, there it is. I found it. Great.
I figured since I ran table last week for the introductory, it was only fair to kind of take myself out of the running for this, even though I think mine was the best pyramid square.
Okay.
Which one do I pick from Friends?
Oh man, we're gonna do Friends.
Where is that even streaming now?
Oh shit, HBO. My uncle burned me all 10 seasons of Friends on DVD back in like 2006, and those are actually great things to have if you ever get the DVD box set, because they have extended scenes that you won't be able to see on streaming.
Did you ever bring those Friends DVDs to a theater class where you forgot your shit?
I was just going to say he was lucky in general. I mean, in 2006, my uncle burned me It hurt. That's what he said.
Hey.
All right, Sally, what are we doing next week?
So I guess as like a safe bet to do something I'm very, very familiar with, I think we should probably go with Joey on Friends. Let's do Joey Tribbiani on Friends. I I think we also had Ross and Phoebe on there. But
I was thinking Ross too.
I,
Yeah.
I guess
Every single one of them are flanderized.
yeah.
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 I feel like the same thing as Park and Rec is they all kind of got flanderized as well too.
And not to get too ahead of ourselves, but I'd love to talk about Joey as an individual episode, and we might even have a different thing in mind where we talk about him again further down the line.
Yeah.
And to that end,
I do think that because I love Chandler so much that I don't feel like he was flanderized.
Oh, you're 100% incorrect on that.
I really do think he's got the strongest growth, honestly, and he from what he was at the beginning to the end. I don't know, but Joey for sure was kind of the most of the flanderized. I would make that case because he gets kind of left behind out of all the group of friends towards the end. So Joey Tribbiani on Friends, let's do it.
All right, so now we know next week we're going to be watching 5 episodes of Friends and talking about Joey Tribbiani, but like I alluded to a second ago, that might not actually be the only time we talk about him in this series. If you guys want to watch along at home and get these episode maps that we're going to be using each week and watch along with us, that's actually all going to be available on the Patreon that we're going to be starting alongside this show. We're going to have the different tiers available. We're going to probably just start at the $1 a month. You can give us ideas for the show, future episodes you'd like to see. You can vote in polls that we're going to have going. They're going to dictate some of the games and segments that we get to do here on the show. A lot of other cool stuff. Maybe eventually, if this does pick up, we can talk about dumb merchandise that's copyright free, but just different things that we're kicking around as we get this off the ground. If you want to support us as we continue to find what the Flanderization Files is going to be, we'd really appreciate it. The link's going to be right here once Sally gets it ready, and then we'll have it in the episode description as well, and then we'll work alongside the other 3 guys here and figure out what that's going to look like. And to that end, rather than doing a mind meld to end the episode today, I want to throw things back to when we would just go around in a circle and just play a category and just kind of spout ideas at each other until we land on something that Ben thinks is good enough to end the show on. So the category is, what do you think should be on our Patreon? I'll start with the side project we've talked about a few times that we might get going, a second side series called Hero versus Himbo, where it's still Flanderization Files, but we look at 2 different characters in a series with very different roles, the protagonist or the idiot. So, like we talked about with Friends, I think Ross and Joey is going to be one that we'll explore in this future series down the line, along with Corey and Eric Matthews from Boy Meets World, another good dichotomy there that we're going to be exploring on a deeper level and see what Flanderization means to both of those characters in the same series. But it doesn't have to be a full paragraph like mine is. It can be anything.
Okay, what about you brought up a second side podcast? Well, then I'm gonna bring my own second little side podcast, but it's gonna be movie themed, where we watch a new I don't know if it'll be an upcoming movie or anything like that we watch. Maybe it's on streaming or something. I don't know, a B film, whatever it may be, and we can tell if it's an original idea or not.
Okay.
I like that.
What's the name of it? No wrong answers.
Thought or Thought.
I'm so excited to see how that ties in.
Like, is it like an original thought, or is it just like another thought? You know what I mean?
Okay.
This might be copy and paste from our notes, but I really do think if we want to talk a little bit about reverse flanderization for like a half-hour podcast, we could put that on our $5 tier and call it, I don't know, the reverse card.
Okay, I like this. I like the trend of having to name the first thing that's coming to mind.
I think something that could be on the Patreon would be, I'm going to kind of combine with Tyler a little, but sitcoms and TV shows, and then we would watch the movie that came out from that TV show. So I'm thinking like the Simpsons movie or the Bob's Burgers movie, and like talking about, it's still within the context of the show. Did they like go super flanderized for a movie potentially? Not like
Drake
go
and
way out on
Josh
a limb.
go to Hollywood.
Great call.
Oh my god.
You gotta come up with a name
Gotta come up
right
with
here,
a
right
name.
now, right on the spot.
Shit. I don't know. The blast fountain. I don't know, dude.
The blast fountain. Tyler, I'm sorry I shit on thought. All right. Here's what we're gonna put on the Patreon. You ready? We're gonna have a poll going. They can vote on, characters they want to see, and they can really allow us to pander to them. So maybe if there's a poll option that's really popular every given month, once a month, I'll sit down with just one of the other hosts, and we'll talk about that character in a little more depth, just to really cater to our audience. And that's going to be called the Flander Pander Two-Hander.
I like that. Again, he had all fucking day to practice
That one
this.
I
Like
had
he
30
knew.
seconds. I had the full time. You know how long it took me to think of that? As long as it took Ben to think of. I already forgot, man. Fountain Blast, was that what it
The
was?
blast fountain,
I
dude.
knew it sounded like a Mountain Dew flavor that wasn't going to stick around, but I just couldn't put my finger on it.
We should just go back to Squadcast as a Patreon thing just to see Will get all pissed off at his microphone and call it.
Yeah, every
Squad
6
Blast in the
minutes I
Flash.
have to leave the stream.
To go on the Patreon, it'll be an original series by me as I discover and try to be an actor. And how I do it will be kind of similar to Undercover Boss meets Dirty Jobs, right? So I'm gonna go to all these different places and learn these jobs, and then the last 10 minutes of the periodic episode that I'm making will be like the actual scene that I would be doing for the film. So like if like my character in the film is supposed to be a gas station worker, then I go out to a gas station for a week and learn how to be a gas station worker, and then I prepare, and then I do the actual scene, and then it'll be very cinematic, that last 10 minutes or last 5 minutes or however that scene lasts. It could literally be me just with one line, like that'll be 3:45.
You were
Like,
trying
that's
to
it.
make money on this, not the other way around, right? Like, you have to get jobs. You have to get
I
a
think
film
it would be a
crew.
good
You
series.
have to book roles in different things that allow you to go do these. Like, hey, they want you as the lead in a movie. Oh, cool. Is he a garbage truck worker? Because that's my Monday to Friday next week. Hope that lines up.
I feel like we're opening a lot of opportunities for a lot of people out there.
What's it
I
called?
think they're not making that many movies about garbage truck people anymore, and I think that's something we need to hit on.
I
That's
just
a
want to
market
hear
right
your
there.
title, because Undercover Job or Undercover Boss and Dirty Jobs makes me worried you're going to call this Dirty Boss, and I just really, really hope that's not the case.
Daily jobs under the sun.
Why under the sun?
I'm
Now
going
we
with
can only
thought.
film in the summer.
That's more thought
because
than
then
thought.
I can have the sequel, Daily Jobs Done at Night. What? Okay, what about this? Okay, so like because the show is about me trying to be an actor, acting like the boss.
We could have just said like T-shirts. We could have just put T-shirts on there.
Yeah.
How about
or like a nice little drawn photo from us.
How about on our $20 tier, we release chapters of our book based on a podcast, the Flanderization novelization,
Mmm.
and then
Dibs
we
on
can give it a
Jane
discount.
Eyre.
Fuck you! I also don't know what we're doing when you say that.
What's eating Virginia Woolf?
What are we doing? Are we doing mashups?
And that's categories.
That's our show, everybody.
Thank you all so much for watching, listening, however you're, digesting this.
However you're doing it under the sun.
Sorry, yeah. There we go.
Fuck you.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody, or listening, or however you do it under the sun. We just want to say thank you, obviously, to all of you for listening, but also fuck you all.
See how it feels? We can go again.
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching or listening, or however you are getting our content anywhere under the sun. You guys are
What
Why
was
did I get
that?
an email? Sorry, why did I have to get an email?
Buddy, this is the show. Ben can't keep it together. Thanks so much to Sally for producing. Thank you all so much for watching.
No,
and
I
listening.
got it.
All right, I'm gonna throw it over to Ben. He's gonna get us out of here. All right, I think we got it, man.
Thank you all so much for watching, and we really just thank you for either watching or listening, or however you're getting this show anywhere under the sun, as Tyler would say. We just want to say thank you if you're listening. Like, it's so cool to be able to like just chat with our friends and have an audience who also is interested in what we're talking about. Also, thank you to Dakotah. You also have heard us call him Sally, for all the work he does behind the scenes. The rest of us work on this a couple of days a week, if not maybe the day of. But Dakotah does all the work behind the scenes, making the show what it is. So just, if you see him in the streets, give him a firm handshake. Anyway, thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.